Yeah, you mentioned Aaron there, and of course, he's the lead singer on "Have Some Fun with the Funk."
Mm-hmm.
Now, that song was recorded well before the movie came out. It wasn't written or produced for the movie. How did it kind of land in your lap then when it was originally recorded?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm trying to think when it was probably the second thing that I did for Jive after the Don Phillips stuff, and Steve had a cassette of a song that he had probably did a work tape of. Don't quite recall how it went, but as far as the lineage, but I think he knew that would be a good song for Aaron and a party song, just something fun, because that whole record was all about, I think it's Aaron's party, come get it, so it was all about having a good time, and Have Some Fun with the Funk was like, it was a little edgy too. So, and that was always something that you didn't want it to all be so soft. You wanted to have a little bit of edge. So even when you hear that song, when it comes out, I had to take a listen to it again just to familiarize with myself with and have the memories come back a little bit. But it opens with like some beatbox stuff. So it's actually Aaron doing beatbox, James D. Train Williams doing beatbox, and then Aaron counts off the numbers, and then there's this big swell and the typical hit, the orchestra hit of the time, and you're into a party. And so that's what I think was sort of the directive that I had probably gotten from Steve back when he gave me his cassette and the idea. So I just started, programming it from there. And back in the day, we would do stuff on Drum Machine. I was working with Logic Audio, and Korg Tritons and S6000s and MPCs and all that kind of stuff, all the technical work. Had some fun with some of, we mentioned the ethereal thing before you said, but I had some fun with that because that's kind of my thing. I like putting a little bit of kind of dust on the ethereal aspect of the tune. So.
Yeah, it's very much a spontaneous block party type of song in there, because it sort of starts with the beatboxing and then sort of builds up from there. Now, one thing you mentioned D. Train Williams, which of course I think a lot of the folks at home will know is one half of the original Poke Rap as well.
Yeah, and he was just at my house just like 20 minutes ago, so we're still super close, and I've known him for well over 25 years or so.
Yeah, absolutely awesome there. But you did some of the background vocals as well with about a group of about half a dozen folks. What was that kind of like?
Yeah, well, I definitely, I think we mocked some of the party stuff when I would first do the original track, So I think I did like the second verse, I would just sing harmony with him. So when it came time, and a lot of that stuff was recorded in my production studio, as far as like, doing all the rhythm tracks and the basics and the guitars and things. And then we would take those files and bring them to the big studio. And so we did that up at Battery. And that's when we decided we would okay, D-Train was going to be involved, and he brought in a bunch of the other singers. And I think we had done a lot of stuff with a girl named Nikki Gregoroff, and so she was a great singer that we used to use for a lot of our publishing stuff, and just a great artist herself. So, we just brought everybody into the studio to have fun and clap and say little shout outs and just increase the party vibe of the track.
Yeah, I think you struck a good balance of making it sound like, spontaneous and not making it sound, though, too polished in regards to some of the backing singers and stuff like that. So that aspect of it ended up working really well. Now, this was recorded it sounds like either late 98 or early 99, if I understand correctly. So it was recorded well before the movie came out. And you're not entirely sure. I asked about this earlier. You're not entirely sure how it ended up there. It was probably some folks talking around like Steve and maybe, D-Train having already had some Pokemon experience. Certainly would have been in the loop there. But you did eventually find out it had gotten selected. I take it, it didn't seem like you knew a ton about Pokemon at the time. What was that experience like?
Yeah, no, I definitely didn't know much about Pokemon, maybe from my niece at the time, or just kind of knowing about a little bit about it, but I didn't understand the characters. I think, like you said, I think it was part of, it says 99 as far as the credits go on the album. So I'm not sure when the movie was released. So sometimes those things get kind of, the music is done while the movie's being produced, and then the movie would be released. But, so that could have been the connection. And it was probably, Clive Calder, Barry Weiss, the heads of Jive, and all the other record, because I know Craig Kalman and people from Atlantic were involved in this record. So I'm sure it was like a chatting about who do you got, who's on your roster that could do some music for this. So, and then Steve having this fun song, and then obviously us, putting something that had all that fun party energy together and a great track and high energy drums and programming and things like that. So.
Now, despite you not having a ton of knowledge about the franchise, this was still kind of a big deal to you. You have because this was a double platinum album in the United States, you actually have a plaque for this. What was it like getting one of those?
Yeah, that was actually, I think, my first one that I had gotten through my first platinum record that I've ever gotten, and that was fun. Yeah, I think it's a culmination of just, what you like hard work and what you have focused on in your career that kind of gives those accolades or, accomplishments that you would get recognized for. I think that's kind of the thing that stands out now. Like when I have it hanging on my little rec room where I have my drums and my piano and stuff. So, it's definitely, it's a remembrance of kind of the hard work that you put into getting to those places. So that part I have certainly a lot of respect for, and it was fun to listen to the track again. Like I hadn't heard it in such a long time. So, we worked with some really great people on that, like the guys at Battery, my engineer, Tim Donovan, who was always there for stuff. If you look in our credits for Britney and for so many other things that we did, Tim was always a part of our team. He was just a great person to work with. And, again, go down the list of some of the other people, even all the assistants like Charles and Paul Oliveira and those guys, they were always there. They were a great team to work with at Battery. So it's the culmination of that. When you look at the plaque, you're like, okay, I remember those guys. I remember working on that. And that was the fun part of it.
All right. Well, another song that you had the opportunity to work on was Aaron Carter's Have Some Fun with the Funk, which was not originally designed as a Pokemon song, but eventually found its way to the first movie soundtrack that, interestingly, effectively makes you one of the few people that's, on the To Be a Master and Pokemon, the first movie soundtracks, which is a neat little bit of trivia. But how did you get involved on that project?
Well, my good friend, again, Paul Umbach, who lives here in Vegas. He's moving back here to Vegas. He was producing on that track, and they called me in to sing backgrounds on that with some other singers. And it was wonderful because what was really cute at the time, Aaron was a little kid. I think he was like 12, maybe 12, 13 years old. And it was interesting to watch like how his brother Nick had already been a big celebrity with the Backstreet Boys. So his mom was sitting there with him in the green room, and before we went into the studio, and she's like, okay, Aaron, I'll be back to get you at such and such a time. Because, when they're that young, you got a time limit to have them in the studio, and then they got to be done, So it was so cute to watch him interact with his mom because they were used to that celebrity lifestyle. And he wasn't a big-headed kid. He wasn't into his stardom. He wasn't into his brother's stardom. And you could tell it wasn't about nepotism. They didn't give him the gig because his brother was Nick. He really could sing. So we got in there, and we really did have some fun with Aaron.
All right, let's go on to my first pick, which is Have Some Fun with the Funk by Aaron Carter. Now, those of you who follow the podcast feed closely will know that a few months ago, I had an opportunity to interview Paul Umbach, who did some of the engineering and production work on this song. And we got a chance to talk about it. That was sort of an outgrowth of sort of the research I did for this discussion. But one reason I brought this up, this song, if you take out the center vocals, you hear that there's a very much an ethereal sound to some of the background, like I guess you could say atmosphere of that. Anne, did you kind of notice that listening to this?
Yeah, like I loved the atmospheric synth and like that it seemed to get a bit stronger as they kind of took the location of the song from the street party to the beach. Very much appreciated that.
Yeah, it has a transportative effect, assuming that's even a word. It sort of does that. And the other thing you kind of notice much more easily there is sort of the backing voices. There is some beatboxing by Aaron and actually James D. Train Williams, who I'm sure a lot of the folks at home will recognize is also one half of the original English Poke Rap. But you can sort of hear a bit of a crowd. It sounds fairly, I guess, multicultural, at least a little bit there. They had about 5 or 6 different people in the doing the backing vocals there that you can hear much more clearly when you do this. This is one of the main reasons I picked this out. I assume you noticed that as well, Anne.
I did, yeah. It wasn't like the thing about the song that stuck out to me the most listening through this, but I definitely, noticed you can hear a lot more of the background party sort of feel and a lot of just different voices other than Mr. Carter's going on.
Yeah, and another thing I noticed is in sort of I guess you could call it percussion or drum work, is that during the verses you can hear this sound that sounds, I think, a little bit like a clock. Not sure exactly what type of clock or stuff like that, but it does sound that. And I think that sort of ties into sort of the line, this party is too short, which is a metaphor both for the sort of the song and the party that's going on itself, but also kind of a metaphor for life, and that you need to go out and enjoy things. I don't know, did you pick up on that, Anne?
I actually didn't pick up on that clock, so I'll have to listen through again. I was a little distracted because what I mostly noticed was I think this is the first time I actually realized this song had chords and a key. I've always loved this song and paid attention to the beat and the percussion. Once I stripped away the vocals, though, it was oh, you could actually play this song on a piano. There's actual music underneath it, not just this fun beat. So I don't know. Clearly I was focusing on all the wrong things.
And I wanted to toss out one thing that's not directly related but to our discussion topic, but is related to this song. The song, as well as a couple others on the soundtrack, kind of gets a fair bit of flack for not having a ton to do with the movie. It's not actually used in it. It's not even lyrically all that tied to it. I just kind of like it because I think it's just a well-produced and written song. I will definitely give it that. I did kind of want to toss out, though, this song takes place, at least partially, in sort of an urban environment and stuff. Do you think this would have worked well for a year and a half or so later for the third movie, Short, which does take place in a city and stuff like that and has a bit of a party at the end?
Yeah, actually. Yeah. That would have worked perfectly, especially because the city life we see in that third movie, Short, is kind of down on the street with the people and everyone just kind of having fun in a back alley sort of thing. When I say people, I mean Pokemon, but the drift,
Yeah, so those were kind of a smattering of things I noticed listening to the background on that particular one.